All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. On behalf of the New Jersey Council of County Colleges and the Center for Student Success, welcome to UndocuJersey, Pathways for Undocumented Student Success. This webinar will be recorded and posted on our website at njstudentsuccess.com. Immediately following the presentation, please feel free to submit your questions in the question box located in the control panel of GoToWebinar. Now, let me introduce you to our presenter. Giancarlo Tello is a New Jersey dreamer who was born in Peru and currently attends Rutgers University, Newark. He started his involvement in the immigrant rights movement in 2010 with the New Jersey Dream Act Coalition, where he organized and advocated for undocumented youth through open forums, lobbying visits, trainings, leadership development, and presentations. In 2014, he was the campaign manager for the New Jersey Dream Act campaign, which granted in-state tuition for undocumented students in New Jersey. A recipient of the ACLU New Jersey Torchbearer Award and others, he continues to fight for increased access to higher education for all students. In 2015, he was appointed by New Jersey Assembly Speaker Vincent Prieto to the College Affordability Student Commission to produce a report to the governor and legislator with findings and recommendations to make college more affordable. Of special mention is that Giancarlo was recently accepted to Rowan University, where he will be pursuing his master's degree in the higher education administrative track. Congratulations, and Giancarlo, take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Maras. I hope you all can hear me. It looks like you can. Thank you for Dr. Maras and the Center for Student Success, New Jersey Council of County Colleges for hosting this webinar. Thank you all for participating and being interested in working with undocumented students. As will be shown later in demographics, our state is actually very high up there. It's the 5th highest state with amount of undocumented people in our population, and you know, as we all know, in today's day and age, we all need a post-secondary education and move forward with our life. So hopefully this is helpful to all of you. Feel free to ask questions at the end and jot them down, and then we'll try to get as much as we can. My email and contact information will be at the end as well in case you want to follow up with me later on. So let's get started. So this is an outline of what we'll be touching on. I'll be doing an introduction first, then be going on a personal story narrative of my own. We'll highlight the legal environment, both national, statewide, moving on from federal to state level, what's going on. Then we'll talk more about key barriers of what's affecting our educational access of success for undocumented students, whether they have DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or not. And then giving out some ideas and suggestions on how to move forward with building a support system, resources, and recommendations. So I'll start with my personal story, and that's a picture of me. I'm going to turn on my webcam real quick just for this part of the session. So I believe y'all can see me right through there. Okay, I'm going to hide myself, but y'all should be able to see me. Yeah, okay, it'll be there. Okay, so my name is Giancarlo Tello. I was born in Lima, Peru in 1990, and when I was 6 years old, my parents decided that for me to have a chance at an education, a career, a future, a stable environment, it would be best to migrate to the U.S. So when I was 6 years old, my mom bought a ticket for her and myself to come to the U.S. She told me we were going to Disneyland. We ended up landing in Newark Airport, and I saw snow for the first time in my life, and I was very confused. But I started in first grade in the K-12 system in New Jersey, Teaneck, New Jersey, actually. Went to first grade, second grade, third grade. Was able to master English fairly quickly because I was so young. You know, every day saying the Pledge of Allegiance, etc. Elementary school, middle school, high school. Eventually, when I got to high school, my sophomore year of high school, I took a course called Driver's Ed. And Driver's Ed, I imagine some of you all have taken it possibly recently. We have to take a written exam. I was lucky enough to pass it, and when I took that card home to tell my mom, let's go to the DMV to go get the sign so I can start learning how to drive, because that's what 16-year-olds want to do. That's when she told me that actually I'm undocumented, or quote-unquote illegal. And that's when my own personal challenges of being an undocumented student and person in general started. And that's how I've gotten involved with this work. It's very personal to me, my family, friends, and community. And that's what I hope I'll be able to help you all out with. And we can collaborate together on working with this. So I'll go ahead and turn off my camera, and we will continue the presentation. So let's look demographically. Nationally, there are about 11.2 million undocumented immigrants, and this according to Pew in 2012, across the entire U.S. Nationally as well, the estimate is that about 65,000 undocumented students graduate from high school every year. New Jersey, as I mentioned before, actually has the 5th highest amount of population for undocumented immigrants living inside it. In 2012, we had about 525,000 undocumented immigrants, and the number has actually been steadily going up. According to a report that was released in 2010, New Jersey educates approximately 28,000 undocumented students in the K through 12 grade annually. So that's including immigrants in the 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, etc. I'm going to reference Rutgers University a bit, mainly because that's the primary institution where I attend and I've been able to do a lot of work on and partner with. So if you see me referencing that a bit, it's just because that's the main data source that I have as well. In Rutgers University, New Brunswick, there are about 200 self-identified undocumented students, and in Newark campus, it's about 50. This number has been steadily going up since we passed the tuition equality bill recently. And the reason we have these numbers, it's not that somebody just comes out and says, I'm undocumented to like their dean or financial aid or admission. Sometimes that happens. But we know this because when they want to qualify for in-state tuition, if you're undocumented, you have to fill out an affidavit, saying that you are under this status and you promise to legalize your status, etc. We'll cover that later on. But through their petitions for in-county rate or in-state tuition rates, that's how we're able to identify about approximately how many undocumented immigrants are attending a college institution here in New Jersey. Legal environment, everybody's most fun stuff. So disclosure, I'm not a lawyer. What I am saying, and this is not legal advice, this is legislation that has already been introduced. This is the language as it's presented. So if you all do have any legal questions, I can refer you to the guidelines or what I've seen, but always if you have a student that should require legal help, they should contact an accredited attorney. And I do have a list of nonprofit and pro bono lawyers near the end in the resources section that you can direct them to. So the DREAM Act, some of you all may have heard of it. What I'm touching base on right now is the federal DREAM Act. Apologies, I didn't write that in there. So the DREAM Act, what's commonly known as is commonly known, was first introduced in 2001 by Senator Durbin in Illinois. And it's called the Development, Relief, and Education for Alien Minors, otherwise known as DREAM. This legislation would have created a pathway to citizenship to undocumented youth who have entered the country when we were very young, such as myself when I entered 6. And if we did that and graduated high school, obtained a GED, or gone to the military or go to college for a couple of years, it would have allowed us on a pathway towards legalization, whether it be a green card, citizenship, etc. The Federal DREAM Act has not passed. The Federal DREAM Act is not law. And you'll see different requirements at different sources because it's been reintroduced with different requirements at every part. You know, Congress always does its own negotiations, whether with the president or with the Senate, etc. But for now, just rest assured that the DREAM Act has not passed, unfortunately. So it's been reintroduced several times. In 2010, it almost did pass. It passed the House of Representatives, and it was stopped in filibuster in the Senate. President Obama would have indicated that he would have signed it. So DREAM Act now going on to state levels. So state level DREAM Acts have become introduced. They're called as well tuition equity legislation. Some of you all may have heard of the New Jersey DREAM Act. That's what we commonly refer to as tuition equity legislation. So there are different types to it, but the basic level of a state DREAM Act, it would allow certain undocumented students who attended a high school in that state for a number of years, meet like one or two other requirements to be able to be eligible for either in-county tuition rates or in-state tuition rates, depending on the institution that you're attending. To give context to it, if I was going to Rutgers before this DREAM Act passed, which I was, I would have been charged I was being charged the out-of-state rate. So for a year tuition, it was around $24,000 to $26,000, which obviously I could not afford on my own because of all these barriers, right? If you're undocumented, you're not eligible for financial aid, either federal or state, at least in New Jersey. You're not eligible for Perkins loans, Pell grants. If you're not eligible if you're full undocumented to work legally. So there's very limited access to financial resources as well. So the DREAM Act varies depending on state, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But the federal one has not passed. We have a state DREAM Act, but it does not allow us to get on our pathway towards citizenship, any form of legalization. That is a complete prerogative of the federal government. The state cannot do anything like that. This only addresses the issue of tuition rates. Now we're going to Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, otherwise known as DACA, and that's what I'll be referring to it from now on. You might have heard it a lot recently as well. So the first instance of our usage of DACA was in 2012 when President Obama signed an executive action directing the Department of Homeland Security, formerly known as INS, to grant temporary reprieve to certain undocumented youth that arrived for a certain age, met a background check, etc., to be able to remain legally in the U.S. for a limited amount of time without being deported. That's the deferred action part of it. If you fall under this criteria and you get accepted into this program, you can obtain work authorization. That's something that I have. That's why I can work legally. We can touch base on that on questions later on. It also allows for travel outside of and to be able to return to the U.S. through a program called Advanced Parole. It usually is only approved for terms of educational or humanitarian travel. You do have to proactively apply Department of Homeland Security to get advanced parole. It does cost a significant sum of money, and when you get approved, you have to make sure that you leave and return between the allotted time that they give you. So that's a little bit more into the weeds, but it is an option available to people, and they should consult a lawyer if that's something that they're planning on doing. Having deferred action does not mean you can just leave the country whenever you want and come back. If they want to leave the country, they need to have advanced parole, and if they should consult legal help right away, if that's something they're planning on doing. Right now, DACA is valid for a period of 2 years, and it can be renewed. There was a push, we'll touch on that later, but it is available for 2 years, renewable. Keep in mind, this is an executive action, meaning that the next president will actually have to reauthorize this program or can take it away. But for now, it's staying in place. For now, students and youth and all undocumented that fall into this DACA category can apply and receive it and renew. I just got mine renewed late last year or a year ago, and it's still a functioning program. So eligibility for DACA. We'll touch on this a little quickly. I'm going to do a time check. We're still good on time. Apologies if I speak a little quickly. We'll make sure this gets sent out and it'll be posted on YouTube. So to be eligible for DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, a person must have been born on or after June 16, 1981, meaning, at that point they had to be under 30. Arrived in the U.S. before their 16th birthday, must have continually resided in the U.S. from June 15, 2007 to June 15, 2012, when President Obama announced it. They had to have been physically present in the U.S. on that date to be eligible for this DACA program when President Obama announced it on June 15th. They must be 15 years or older in order to apply and be present in the United States on the day that they apply. So if someone meets all the criteria and they're under 15, they'll have to wait until they hit the 15-year-old mark before they can proactively apply with DHS, Department of Homeland Security. Must currently be in school or have graduated high school or completed GED or have been honorably discharged veteran of the military. And they also do a background check. So no felonies or significant misdemeanors. I think they allow up to 3 misdemeanors, but highly advised if anyone has any contact with law enforcement, contact a lawyer when you're filling out this application. I would definitely recommend doing it regardless. Right now we're going over just the eligibility as stated by by Department of Homeland Security and United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. So now we'll move on to the New Jersey Tuition Equality Act, commonly known as the New Jersey DREAM Act. This was signed into law at the end of 2013 and by both our chambers of the Assembly and Senate, and signed by Governor Christie. So what it allows youth to do is, for those that are of us, including myself, who are undocumented. So as long as we fulfill these criteria, must have attended a high school in New Jersey for 3 or more years, graduated from a New Jersey high school, or have attained the equivalent, a GED, issued by the State Department in New Jersey, and is a non-immigrant alien with a currently valid visa. So you have to have no status, essentially. You file an affidavit with your institution promising to legalize your status as soon as you can. So essentially how most institutions handle it is you bring in your high school transcripts, they verify it, and then you sign a form promising to legalize your status. I'll bring up examples of that later on. They're included in this presentation, and you can also click on them. You know, Rutgers has our own. Many institutions do have their own. They follow around the same criteria. And once that's approved, it's handled by different departments at different institutions. Ours, I believe, is at the registrar. Some people do it at the admissions level, and that's something, you know, your own institution has a handle on how it's being done. Here are a couple of different websites. I'm not going to click on them only because I want to make sure that I don't mess with the presentation too much. Or I guess I could try. Let's try. Let's show Kane University. Here you go. There's one example. They have under their registrars, it's called the New Jersey DREAM Act. It explains what happened. You have to complete this form, this application and affidavit, and they send it to their respective agency. If it's a new student, it goes to admissions for Kane. A continuing student, it will go through the registrar. So it depends on the institution, also on the level that they're going into. So we'll go back to this presentation here. So national landscape. This is taken from the National Immigration Law Center, NILC, a very good resource for legal resources on, you know, stuff like Federal DREAM Act, DACA, etc. There are a bunch of lawyers that put together a lot of great presentations and resources. Over here we can see New Jersey's here on, obviously on the East Coast. The code here, if it's light blue, that means we have tuition equity laws, meaning we're allowed to pay the same rate as our peers. You can see that's a fair amount of states here on the East Coast and the Central Heartland. The ones as you keep getting green, dark green means that these states offer students, undocumented students, both access to in-state tuition rates or in-county rates, as well as access to their state financial aid programs. For us, that would include anything under HESA. So tuition assistance grants, EOF, etc. We do not have access to that in New Jersey. That was not signed into law by Governor Christie. So right now, undocumented youth in New Jersey get in-state tuition, but we do not have access to anything dispersed by HESA. But we can see that there are a lot of states that have been proactive in this, right? Some states, unfortunately, like Alabama and South Carolina, outright ban students from attending some of their colleges. Georgia as well. There's been a lot of protests there. But New Jersey, there is no outright ban on undocumented students, at least as far as I've heard. But we can always look into that. Now, going on to the next part, barriers in pursuing higher education. So there is, let me see if I can minimize something. Okay, cool. Okay, limited pre-college outreach. So, sorry. So I'm going to highlight the fact that this is not just an issue that's affecting undocumented students, but it's also affecting U.S. citizens with undocumented parents, because there are barriers where the student that is a citizen has to fill out a FAFSA and they'll get a denial letter. What that simply means is that the student has to appeal with HESA, and then they will be tag UF whatever they're eligible for. Unfortunately, they get denied first. I assume it's something because the FAFSA website puts in the state part together, but that's something we can discuss on later. Rutgers University Newark, our director of financial aid, is expert on this. I can definitely share any resources with you all that you might want to, and I could give you her contact information if anybody emails me at the end of this. But continuing barriers. So there's not a lot of pre-college outreach. So there's opportunities or programs like the Educational Opportunity Fund. Undocumented students are not eligible for it. So right away, we're not given that. If we're that population of first generation low income, we're not given that opportunity or that hope with a program like EOF. Likewise, a student that is a citizen is afraid of applying for a lot of these programs because they think it might out their parents. And that's a very real fear that a lot of citizen children of undocumented parents live with. And there are millions of mixed status families out there. So there's a lack of public and clear pathways for both undocumented students and citizen students whose parents are undocumented to attend. The brochures all show a typical U.S. citizen with U.S. citizen parents or international students, and this is how your pathway through college is, right? There's not a lot of places online or a lot of guides out there that show this is your path if this is the situation that you're in. There's also a lack of information right now for students on merit-based scholarships. So, for example, I may be eligible for a particular merit-based scholarship at Rutgers University, Newark, but if they don't put it on their website or if they don't proactively advertise it that I'm eligible for it, chances are I'm not going to, A, not going to find out about it, or B, realize that the scholarship exists, but not know that I am eligible to apply and qualify and receive it. So there are those things that we have to be proactive with students in terms of identifying what they're eligible for and letting them know proactively, or else we will assume that we're not eligible for it. And that's unfortunate because of our lack of access to financial aid. These scholarships are some of the only ways that we have to go through college and obtain our degrees. Another process which any admissions folk on the listening in right now, either now or later on the YouTube, is that some admissions online applications, they don't really say you can apply for and click here if you're undocumented or you have DACA, right? It'll either ask you, are you a citizen, are you a green card holder? If not, are you an international student, and like what's your F1 visa, right? So when I'm applying to, say, Rutgers, if I see only those options, I don't know which one to pick, and that inherently makes me think like, oh, I'm not eligible to attend this university or this college, community college, county college, because I don't meet those criteria that they list out. Full disclosure, I keep saying university, etc. I am a graduate of Bergen Community College, proud graduate. I've obtained my associate's degree there, so I love the community college sector. I love all that's going on there. But I know that we also don't have all the resources to update this stuff from the community college level. So if any admissions officers or officials want to look at this, looking at how we can make this more accessible to youth, make sure they don't get discouraged just by a simple drop-down menu, it's a very real thing, and I think it could affect a lot of people. So going now to the financial aid section of it, which I guess the merit scholarship did count. So a lot of undocumented youth, and I don't have the data points in front of me now, are low family income, and we have lack of access to social services. We don't have access to welfare, to unemployment, to a lot of other resources that many in the underprivileged communities get. We have lack of access to planning advice and financial resources to support completion of a degree, meaning that there aren't people out there actively, most, say, high school counselors, etc. When you go in and you tell them you're undocumented, they're just like, oh, well, you're not eligible to either go to college or to receive any aid, so you should give up. We need to be more proactive in how to talk to them and figure out what is available out there. It may not be the 2-year path, it may not be the 4-year path, but let's figure out a longer 6 to 8 year path, right? Federal financial aid, we are not eligible for grants or student loans or federal work study. However, we are, in other states, they are eligible for some state aid, right? let's see, state financial aid, EOF, TAG, and other HESA programs are not available to undocumented students. However, as I mentioned before, students who are citizens but their parents are undocumented are eligible for both federal and state financial aid. Like I said, they'll likely receive a rejection letter from HESA. They can apply for it, and in every case I've heard of personally, it's been accepted with no problem. They just need to provide some proof of residency, whether it be a utility bill, etc., to prove that they live here in New Jersey. You know, when they're filling it out, the FAFSA, their parents should be putting zeros when they're filling it out, right? They should not be using any other number that they got, and it's not recommended that they apply with a tax identification number. But feel free to consult with your financial aid office specifically about this, or I can connect you with our expert at Rutgers University in Newark. But there's still, again, little transparency of what campus or school-based merit-based scholarships undocumented students are eligible for. So that's something we need to be more proactive on listing a guide or a list at the very least of scholarships that don't require citizenship as a requirement or green card, right? Thank you for staying with me so far. Next part is retention. Stress, depression, and anxiety over deportation and legal issues are very big. You know, a lot of undocumented youth are wondering if when they get home from school, if their family is still going to be there, or if when their parents get out of work, if they'll be able to make it home. If you've seen within the last year or so, there have been a lot of numerous ICE raids going on at workplaces around the country. There are a lot of deportations going on now, and that does weigh on the minds of many undocumented youth. So it does add stress, anxiety. There's also limited academic advising or access to use of health services and CAPS. CAPS, I don't know if that's specific to Rutgers, but that's our kind of like our mental health office where we can go talk to a counselor. Personally, before I put together this presentation, I didn't know that I was able to go there. I assumed you needed to have some other insurance or some other thing. I didn't know that was free, right? We don't have the disposable income to be able to use a lot of these services. Academic advising as well, they're not always geared or trained towards specifically working with undocumented students, right? So that conversation is a little different. Part-time enrollment versus full-time status. A lot of undocumented youth, I'll use myself as an example, do go part-time, sometimes take a semester off or a couple of semesters off. I've done that. And then there's also the issue of, at least at Rutgers, where we de-enroll by not enrolling for a semester. Say I wanted to take a spring off and then come back in fall because I couldn't afford it, I'd have to re-enroll completely and do the whole process again, which is not as hard as applying the first time. But I believe this is a way where community colleges, possibly if there's something at your institution, we could look at to see how to make that transition easier. You know, if we know ahead of time you're going to be taking a semester off, how do we make that simpler, like an easier transition? And how does that go and play with your academic plan towards obtaining your degree, right? You know, your time to degree may be a little bit longer, but let's set up that plan taking into account your own barriers, right? So far, there have been no coordinated institutional responses across the state, even though a lot of campuses are located in high immigrant counties and cities. Going back to Rutgers again, we're located in 3 of the highest, Newark, New Brunswick, and Camden. Although obviously we have some of your institutions as well. I believe Passaic and Hudson are attending, and I know your institutions obviously serve a lot of high immigrant population. Yeah, so there's no coordinated student affairs support for retention. You know, we have a lot of stuff helping on, you know, first generation, low income events, support services, you know, EOF, Educational Opportunity Fund, get their own dedicated counselors, which is great. There's really none specifically focused toward this category of student, or at least any training so that a regular counselor can work particularly with that student. And something specific to Rutgers, New Brunswick does not offer any legal clinics. Rutgers Newark and Rutgers Camden do have our own law clinics. And I don't think any community college has one, but I believe that opens the conversation of what partnerships can we make with existing ones from other institutions. For example, our law clinic here at Rutgers University in Newark is willing to partner with community colleges and other community-based organizations to come out and do these types of presentations, particularly the legal side of it, free of cost. I mean, it's great for them because their law students also get a lot of practice out of it, and it's free of cost to you, and it helps out the students that you're trying to serve and support. Some examples of partnerships that are working on addressing these needs. Again, I'm sorry for always referring to Rutgers. That's just the institution where I've been based in, where I'm a student at, where I'll be graduating at next month. We have something called the Rutgers Future Scholars Program, which is they identify you in middle school, but if you're undocumented, you are eligible to go through it, and it's a whole academic and financial support system that will eventually place you into a Rutgers institution and have your tuition taken care of. We have some other examples like the Honors Learning Living Community. We have something called Run to the Top, which I don't know if it's here. It's another slide. I'll talk about it now. Some of you all, many of you all have probably already heard about it. And this is specific, again, towards Rutgers Newark. This is, I think, unique in the state. We are implementing a program starting this fall, 2016, called Run to the Top, that if you're a student that is coming from either the city of Newark or transferring in with a 2-year associate's degree, it doesn't have to be in 2 years, just an associate's degree from a community college, a county college in New Jersey, and your family income is below $60,000, your tuition will be paid for. If you're undocumented, or if you have DACA, even without DACA, you qualify for it. This is a pretty new program starting this fall 2016. And I think personally it will give a lot of hope to a lot of possibly your students, knowing that after the 2-year, there is an option, a way to go into the 4-year. This is specific to Rutgers Newark. Rutgers New Brunswick, Norcam didn't have this program, but it's an example of what some institutions are doing. So maybe we could think about how we could implement something similar to this at one of your partner colleges and universities and set up these partnerships to give more hope to your students, right? Let them know that this is your pathway, not just towards an associate's, but towards a bachelor's. And graduation and post-graduation. So there's an uncertainty of even when we get our degrees, whether we have, especially if we are fully undocumented and we don't have DACA, we'll even be able to practice our profession. Licensing is a huge issue. A lot of students don't know if they'll be eligible to practice with nursing or being a teacher, right? A lot of these, or being a salon artist, right? A lot of these professions require licensing from the state, and there's uncertainty as to whether they'll be eligible to practice this when they graduate. And sometimes this uncertainty leads some colleges to bar students from even attempting that degree because they're worried that they won't be able to practice. Quick note, this is actually something that, for nursing specifically, just because I've gotten this question a lot within the last few months, if you're undocumented and you have DACA, you need to have deferred action for childhood arrivals. You can be licensed by the Board of Nursing in New Jersey to practice, whether it be with an RN or a BSN. There has been a lot of confusion about it recently, but I hope that cleared it up. Definitely hope that you're willing to look into your own institution, seeing what the guidelines there are, and if you'd like clarification or who to speak to make sure that everything's good to go, please feel free to contact me, and I'll put you in touch with the right person. There's a lot of also limited access to service learning and internship opportunities. Some of these opportunities you need to be able to either be a citizen or a green card holder. A lot of the requirements for these things I see do have that. And there's not such a push to say that, these are not a requirement, right? Because if you're undocumented, you're looking for when it's listed as not a requirement. But if you don't put anything at all, there's the presumption that even if you put, oh, this is a job opportunity, I'll assume that you probably need to be a citizen or a green card holder to be able to do it. So, we need to be proactive in little nuances like that. Lack of access to career counseling. Career counselors don't have the training, a majority, on knowing what profession a student with or without DACA can get, right? So I think that's something that our institutions can look at and seeing how we can develop these trainings. what experts we can bring in, and making sure the student population and our potential student populations, meaning our like feeder high schools or other schools, actually know what the possibilities are, because that's where the pipeline college starts, right, in K through 12. So we're almost near the end. I'll do a time check, 2:35. I think we'll have a good amount of time for questions. So what can we do right now? We can start building a supportive environment. U.S. Department of Education Secretary, or at least former, Arne Duncan, sent a memo to college and university leaders in October 20th, 2015, so just late last year, on a resource guide of supporting undocumented youth. And it has a huge, it's a really big publication, probably at least 100 pages, that talks about K through 12 and the college level. So far, 680,000 nationally have received DACA, right? But there's still 1.5 million that meet the guidelines, and for whatever reason, they have not applied for or received it. A lot of this has to do with lack of education on it. They don't know DACA exists. Fear. They're afraid of coming forward to the government and letting them know this is my situation and my parents' situation. They're scared that their parents might be quite frankly, deported or some other ramifications. Also, financially, it's very expensive to apply for it. For DACA, it's about $485, which if you're looking at a family that has like 2 or 3 kids, that adds up to a lot, particularly when you take into account lawyer fees. That's why, again, I make the pitch for contact our Rutgers Law Clinic or other law clinics or our nonprofit resource list I'll have later on how we can bring those lawyers to do that work pro bono, or make it either free or low cost to people in your community that need it, right? The U.S. Department of Education and their resource guide, it has some recommendations: create an open and welcoming environment for undocumented students. One example that I'll cite is that for the LGBT community, some professors, teachers, counselors have taken on the proactive measure of putting a sticker, say, on their office or on their desk saying, this space is LGBT friendly, and that immediately does a lot to help the person feel comfortable and safe, right? So maybe we can do something like that with our undocumented population. Provide services and resources to help undocumented students, communicate and demonstrate support for undocumented students, and provide peer-to-peer support and relationship building opportunities. Some colleges have something called dream teams. They're like unofficial student organizations of people that happen to know each other, that are in the same situation, and supporting each other through classes, through sharing textbooks, through knowing about a lawyer to apply for DACA, right? So trying to provide a space and support those opportunities for undocumented youth to meet each other is very crucial, because we know that the cohort model works, right? EOF is a perfect example of how supporting a community from people who have similar struggles can help each other succeed. It's no different for the undocumented population. And build staff capacity and knowledge on relevant issues, which if you're attending this right now or watching it later, you've already taken one of the first steps in doing it, and I applaud you for it. And I encourage you to share whatever you learn with your other colleagues at your institution, or host some other type of session they can attend. I have the link down here. When we send it out, it'll be included. We'll make sure that it is also included in the description, all of these links as well, so you don't have to manually type all of these. So, additional resources. USCIS, United States Citizens and Immigration Services, has a DACA toolkit, resource for community partners, straight from USCIS, on how to support your local community for DACA. So say, for example, you're in a high immigrant population, say you're in Hudson County, Passaic County, this might help be another way for you to outreach into the people, the community that you're serving. There's some guidelines on financial aid on undocumented students. It is all straight from their official website of the government. And then there's a really useful memo on the Hispanic Initiative for Graduate Financial Aid Guide to Success. Not presuming that every undocumented student is Latino, but it is a majority. Other resources, College Board also has their own thing on advising undocumented students. Recommend sharing that as well, particularly with your advisors. Undocumented Student Program is an example of something that Berkeley does. They have a complete program dedicated to working with undocumented students. Their link right there is undocu.berkeley.edu. There's the CUNY Dreamers Hub right up there in New York. It's actually very helpful. I'm going to click on it real quick just to show you just how useful it is. See, they have something, scholarships awarded more than $5 million. They have resources, they have scholarships, they have a FAQ. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. They talk about foster care collaborative. They do a lot of citizenship drives, a lot of scholarship programs, undocumented immigrant rally. So it's a way to let the community know that you care about them and what ways are available for them to, learn and get involved. One of these resources are the dream.us. I'll click on this one real quick too, because this is one of the big ones I've been advocating for. So this is a national philanthropic organization. It has backing from Mark Zuckerberg, the original founder of the Washington Post, Don Graham, and it provides scholarships up to $25,000 to undocumented students. Right now, we can click here in New Jersey. The only two partner colleges for this is Rutgers University Newark and Essex County College. I encourage you all to look into your institution to see whether you can become a partner and whether then the scholarships will be offered to students at your location. It's up to $25,000. If you want further information on that, the website is thedream.us, or feel free to contact me directly. I really want to make sure that this gets out there as well. Educators for Fair Consideration, another place I'm going to click on, hopefully be the last one, e4fc.org. This is probably the most important link to remember for financial aid resources for your students. This is regularly curated list. It gets updated all the time on scholarships that undocumented youth are eligible for. So we can click right here. It's listed by due date, by the category. There are some available specifically if you have DACA or without DACA, and all of these are kept maintained on Google Docs, so you can see, some of these funds, the awards can range from $2,500 to $5,000, right? It's a full list, regularly updated. The first link I send undocumented students to when they contact me. But they also have other great stuff like mini guides, how to find scholarships, how to be a competitive scholarship applicant. It helps talk about how to build a strong application essay, when you want to reveal your status, how you should, how you can frame it within the context of your application, best practices. There are a lot of great resources on this. Particularly, they have legal services as well. Get free legal help right there. They have some stuff in terms of, I think they have a pre-med program. That's something that's been starting up recently for the undocumented population. That's definitely one of the most important links I urge you all to remember and jot down. e4fc.org, Educators for Fair Consideration. United We Dream is a national organization, youth-led, for undocumented students. It's an advocacy organization, but they do implement a lot of other policy programs. So we're at the tail end of it. I'm just going to give some recommendations, and we'll leave at least 10 minutes for questions at the end. This is the UndocuRutgers College Fair model, something which recently started. I believe the first one was in spring 2015. So what this was formatted on was because I, as an undocumented person, got a lot of questions from my community on how do I apply for Rutgers, what scholarships are available, how do I do admissions, how do I do financial aid, and it's obviously unfair if people find out about it only by word of mouth. They just happen to know whoever was in the know, right? So I approached the administration, and with the Chancellor's Office help and admissions and financial aid and all our departments working together, we were able to host a kind of college fair, particularly geared towards undocumented students and citizen children of undocumented parents. This is a format that I think was highly successful. The first session, our first ever one, we got over 200 families. Second one, we got over 400 families. Third one was 300 families. These have been hosted at Rutgers University Newark and New Brunswick. So very successful, and some of your institutions were likely invited to attend and table. How this goes is an example of something that you may want to think about at your college or institution. We usually start off with a personal journey, kind of a little bit of what I said in the beginning, but probably elaborate a little bit more. We had our admissions staff come out and present this, how to apply. If you're undocumented on the online application, you obviously don't check citizen. You check, for at least Rutgers specifically, you check status pending. So it's dependent upon your own institutional model what the admissions process is like. We have the financial aid office present what's available, what institutional and merit-based scholarships are available. How do we talk about a payment plan if that's something that's necessary for your education? We also then take it into Rutgers Law School presentation, the clinic that I mentioned before, and they talk about DACA, as I did before, more in depth. And they're also available at the end to actually help students verify if they're eligible for it and then possibly help them out with their application as well, free of cost. Yeah, then at the end, after we do our DACA intake session, we have a tabling session where community colleges, some of y'all have been involved with this, particularly Essex County College that's right nearby down the street, and we really appreciate when all of us partner together. You come in because sometimes the most affordable option for a student is going to the county college first and then to the four-year institution afterwards. We have different student organizations available that would make these students feel more at home and more welcoming, community organizations. We even had La Casa de Don Pedro attend the last one, being able to give out some health resources for people that need it, because healthcare access is a whole nother topic and form of support that we need to look into as well. Some institutional recommendations recommend that this is something that we'll actually be hosting that I want to invite you all to. It'll be sometime in October. We're going to host a conference on undocumented students, admissions, and financial aid. It'll be hosted at Rutgers University, and we will send out a save the date through the Center for Student Success, and we'll likely advertise it to your institution as well to send in your guidance counselors, your college advisors, your academic advisors, your financial aid officers, your professors, if that's somebody that's really important in your institution in terms of the coursework for a student, and also inviting our K through 12 partners to talk about all of this information that you're getting now, as well as some other best practices around the country. We'll be inviting in other speakers, so I'll send that. But this is something that you can do even in your own institution. Have a staff retreat, have something. I'd be more than willing to come in, and I could recommend other experts to come in and talk with your counselors and your institution in general about, let's train everybody up to speed on how to work with this population. What we are trying to do is make it an annual Undocu Rutgers. You all can call it Undocu Bergen, Undocu Essex, or scrap the whole name anyway. I'm not that creative, and I came up with it. Provide a web page with resources for undocumented students is very useful. You also that link specifically for undocumented students. Having just a separate tab specifically for our needs and what resources are available to us is very impactful, very helpful, and we want to make us want to attend your institution more as well. Feel free to host a DACA drive with our Rutgers Law Immigration Clinic or Child Advocacy Clinic. Feel free to contact me about that. Host a campus-wide conference to discuss best practices for working with undocumented students. Bring in all your partners, bring in the high schools based in your county, right? On how we can set up that K through 12 to county college pipeline for this particular population. So with that, we go on to questions. My contact information is right there. That's my name, my email address, and my cell phone number. Feel free to call or text. I give you permission to do that. Feel free to contact me, and I'll let Dr. Matas control this portion of it now. Let's see if I can give it.
Giancarlo, thank you for your advocacy and for sharing these great resources with our sector. Your personal story and passion certainly shine through. I want you to know that we have 8 institutions participating in the webinar, and thanks to all of you who are still with us. We're now going to go to questions. The first question, Giancarlo, is some folks are asking if they can receive a copy of the presentation.
Yes, certainly. This presentation is available to all of you. I'm sure the Dr. Matas is that if you can send it out,
I
you're
will be
all
happy
more than
to.
welcome to distribute this.
Very, very much so, not a problem. The next question is about DACA students pursuing a nursing degree. The question is, where can they get the actual language from the state of New Jersey? And is respiratory care, radiology, dental hygiene included?
I don't know about those other programs. That is still something that I'm researching with some other colleagues, and if that's something that you have access to in terms of talking to the board, I'd be more than willing to support and help, or be interested in what answers you come up with. For the nursing, you can contact the Board of Nursing. A lot of institutions have done so. I'm not sure if I'm at liberty to disclose, those emails, but it is something that if you ask their board, they will say that they're proactively admitting students. I forget the name of the board person off the top of my head. If I'm not still right, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now just so I can look up that name so I can answer that question. Is that okay, Dr. Matas?
That's fine. Actually, what we can do is while you're doing that, I just want to remind everyone, I do have one more question up. So if you're thinking about submitting a question, please do so at this time so that we can get to it in a timely manner. Giancarlo, would you like me to move on to the last question?
I think I have the answer. I think the best person for them to talk to should be at Schoolmore. Okay, here it is. Joanne Leon. She's the acting executive director of the New Jersey Board of Nursing. She has said since individuals whose immigration status is DACA are basically here legally, at least for the time being, they are eligible for licensure. So I think that would be the best person to contact from the Board of Nursing.
Thank you, Giancarlo. The next question is using ITIN on FAFSA, not recommended. Why?
So that is what I've heard from my financial aid expert here at Rutgers Newark about the tax identification number, using zeros just in case. Um, I think it has to do with the fact that some people or the government or whoever may misinterpret it and make it think that you're trying to say you have a social security number, you're trying to fraud it, to submit fraud it with it. When the student files their taxes, they can, with a tax preparer still state that this is something that they're paying for and do that with their tax identification number. As far as I'm aware, the recommended practice is to use zeros.
Okay.
But if you have DACA, you have a social security number, and you should use your social security number in that case.
Okay. Our final question at this time is, how do we advise students who are citizens and need to appeal to HISA?
That's a great question. So I think you can also reach out to HISA directly. You'll receive a letter trying to verify your parents' residency in New Jersey. You can apply to it. You can appeal it showing utility bills or what have you to show that you are here, your parents are here in the state and that you should be eligible for it regardless because you're a citizen. If they deny it, please feel free to contact me. There has been a Supreme Court case in 2013, somewhere around there, AZ versus HISA. The New Jersey Supreme Court found that if you're a citizen in New Jersey, regardless of your parents' immigration status, that you are eligible for our state-level financial aid. So we can work through that, and feel free to contact me, and I can put you in touch with our director here at Rutgers University Newark, who is an expert on these matters as well.
I see that there are no other questions, so at this time we're going to end the webinar. We want to thank you, Giancarlo Tello, for this wonderful presentation, and to all of you who are watching, we give our thanks. As I mentioned, the webinar is recorded, and we will send out notification when it is posted on our website, and we will also share the presentation with you all. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Matas and the center. Have a good day.